Hey everybody, James here. Before we start the show, I just wanted to let you know that Don't Split the Podcast Network is having a free Q&A panel at Gen Con that is on the Thursday of Gen Con at 7 p.m. in the Crown Plaza Ballroom, Pennsylvania Station C. So come check it out. Go reserve your tickets right now at gencon.com/events and search for DSPN. It's the only thing that comes up. Please come join us. It's going to be me. It's going to be Rudy Basso. It's going to be Vegas Lancaster, Celeste Conowich, and Brittany Quintero from the Venture Maidens are going to be on there. It is going to be a ton of fun. We're going to be talking about podcasting, anything you have about RPG news, reviews, recording actual plays, recording Have Spellbook Will Travel. We will answer them all. Plus, there will be prizes. So, check it out.
At the center of the great forest, on an island in the sky, the crow, deer, and wolf clans have been training 3 fearsome warriors from infancy for one purpose: to protect and serve the goddess of Estra.
So how exactly are we going to do that? Protecting the goddess, I mean.
Fran lies down.
Leica can't answer because she's too busy sniffing both your butts.
Okay, back off, Wolf Clan!
This disturbs me, but not to worry, I will instantly repress it.
These are the guardians of the goddess. Leica, the tiefling paladin who hails from the wolf clan.
Nobody's touching one beautiful hair on the goddess's head as long as I'm around.
Corbin, a human druid from the crow clan.
Human! I'm a crow!
And Fran, a water genasi wizard of the deer clan.
So, is there a way to quit this job or what?
This unlikely trio will venture forth into an unfamiliar world without knowing who can be trusted against the powerful dark force stalking the steps of their goddess and threatening the future of their world. Tune in every second Monday to Dames and Dragons, a 5th edition D&D actual play podcast. See ya then!
This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, we've got an amazing husband and wife design team. That's right, Paige, Leitman, and Ben Heisler are here to talk about writing adventures for Dungeons & Dragons organized play program, the D&D Adventurers League, and they're going to be talking about running and setting up conventions because they do that quite a bit. So let me jump right into our conversation with these two amazing people. All right, I am here with 2 of my very favorite people in the Dungeons & Dragons world, Ben Heisler and Paige Leitman. Welcome to Tabletop Babble. I think this is your first Tabletop Babble experience, although you have been on the round table before. Why don't you let the listeners out there know who you are and what you do in the world of tabletop RPGs? And we can start with either one of you, since so much of what you do overlaps and you work together.
Sure, so I'll kick it off. And first of all, that introduction has practically made me blush. But my name is Ben Heisler. I am a gamer, author, con organizer, and just generally involved with anything I do to support the hobby. I've been gaming since 2nd edition to a limited degree, done a lot of organized play. In my youth, I did a lot of stuff with White Wolf Game Studio, including a brief stint working there. So it's amazing to see how gaming has changed and to have the influence now that we have with the opportunities that have been given to us through the Concreated Content program and the mod that we were able to write for Season 5 to put our own imprint and to help tell our own stories outside of home games.
Nice. Yeah, I think that is 100% accurate about that. And we are going to talk way, way more about the Concreated Content system because when I think of that, I think you two are probably the first 2 people I think of as making lots of stuff. And there's tons of people out there making lots of stuff for sure. So that is you. And of course, Paige, what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Well, I am a big game player. I've played dozens of different game systems. I'm 46, so I cut my teeth on first edition D&D when I was barely a teenager. I am an author. Ben and I have written a lot of stuff together. Local convention organizer. Ben and I have organized a lot of cons. I've been actually organizing cons since the days of Living Greyhawk back in the early 2000s. I have a collie-like instinct to herd gamers, and I can't get away from it. I'm also an admin on the 5th edition Facebook group. That's 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Facebook group, which is just over 90,000 people talking about D&D every single day.
Wow. It's a huge group. I love being part of it. It dominates my Facebook feed. And being a mod is always a thankless job, and I feel like it becomes a greater and greater task the larger the group grows. Is there, it sounds like people are joining pretty quickly, and maybe there's a post at a rate of like 1 post per second, would you say? Is that too fast?
Well, I just want to point out I am one of 11 admins and moderators on there, so I'm a very small part of a very large machine. It does absolutely kind of dominate your Facebook feed once you're on it. It's like drinking from a fire hose. I just ran the numbers relatively recently. We get about 300 posts per day and like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 comments a day.
That's
it's a lot.
That's a ton.
Yeah.
Well, even for 11 people, that is a huge job, I think. So thank you for you and to everybody who is an admin or a moderator for that group, because it's amazing. And thank you both for all of the amazing work you do creating content out there for people at conventions and then organizing people to play. So you are really there in the nitty-gritty, doing tons and tons of stuff, bringing many years of expertise between the two of you to the game table. And I would imagine you are both responsible for the creation of many new gamers, which helps support the hobby, brings more money in, and is just an amazing thing. So for all of that, you are doing at least my Lord's work, the Lord of D&D. So thank you so much for that. So let's talk about the Created Content program. What is it? And what's your process for writing and creating in it? And I know this is a big question, so we can break it down a little bit. But so what is the Created Content program?
Well, there was a need back 2 years ago for some of the larger conventions, particularly Origins and Gen Con, to have more content. The D&D Adventures League program simply could not produce enough mods for thousands of people at these conventions. So they developed a program where each convention could create its own content to help fill its roster with interesting, good D&D Adventures League legal content. WotC has posted rules about the program. I have a website. I can give it to you so you can put it in the show notes. And the rules generally say the following. The convention must go over multiple days, so it can't be a single day game day. You must have at least 15 total tables over the course of the event, which is not too hard to do, and that you must submit your request to the D&D Adventures League admins 9 months prior to the show. Now, DragonCon is our big deal, which is in September in Atlanta. So that's December of the prior year that we have to have a request to the admins. And you need to have a fairly detailed concept proposal, a couple pages per adventure. It's important to let people know that the D&D Adventures League admins are not gatekeepers over who wrote what. So if your convention, Introcaso has some authors and you want to write the leader of Flan and say he's an evil tyrant, then you can. But if the other guys across the United States want to write in Flan for some different con, and they want to say that the leader is a chaotic good maverick and a friend to everybody, they can. There's absolutely no enforcement of continuity. I think that's because that way lies madness. Because there's a lot of it.
Sure.
Like the admins have said that they're getting a lot of requests. Generally, they will not approve more than 12 hours of content per show, and generally only 3 adventures. So you could write, 3 2-hour adventures. You could write 3 4-hour adventures, whatever you like. Carnage Con for 2017 got 4, but that was kind of a special case. Dave Christ with Baldman Games gets special dispensation for Origins, Gen Con, whatever PAXs he runs in Winter Fantasy, and often will have 9 or more 4-hour adventures. But he's also running like several hundred to 1,000 people per slot at 9 to 12 slots a convention. So he's a special case.
So you brought it up, a small con, Introcaso con, which of course we would call Introcanso, I think, probably.
Yes, you're entirely right.
That's perfect.
Yes.
I would know. I'd buy a badge right now.
Game O'Clock host Alex Basso actually came up with that one when we had
Nice.
a small unofficial gaming weekend. So we're talking about anyone who runs sort of a convention can be a part of this if they have the drive and the work ethic to do so?
Yep, it is open literally to everyone who's running D&D Adventures League content for 15 total tables over the course of the show. Now, generally, a convention is 3 slots a day, so if you run 3 slots on Saturday and 2 slots on Sunday, that's 3 tables a slot. I mean, heck, you could do that in a game store.
Yeah, that's pretty great. And then you can have, this original cool adventure series that you've put together. So let's talk about putting those together, though, because that sounds fun, sounds awesome, but also takes a lot of work. And I'm sure both of you are familiar with that. So I'll sort of let you talk about the scope of that work and how you tackle that work together, because you two organize a lot of conventions yourselves, and put these things out there into the world so we have tons of content.
Actually, there's a couple more rules I want to point out because these are mission critical to people who are thinking about it.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, it's not like I can just show up with my notebook, right, and be like, well, here we go. Yeah.
Right. Specifically speaking to that, the final drafts have to be to the D&D Adventures League admins 3 months prior to the convention. So that's a long lead time. So not only do you have to have your stuff together, you have to have it together months ahead of time. DragonCon is in September, so we have to turn in our final drafts in June. Now, the admins don't edit or QC. They just look for big things. So it's not like you're handing a pile of bullet points to the admins and they're going to turn it into an adventure for you. You have to have a complete product to the admins 3 months ahead of time. And they're just looking for like issues of decency or making huge changes to the realms. Like, hey, we just did a big spell that killed all the elves in Faerun. Or, hey, we just destroyed Mulmaster. Or, hey, there's now a dragon named Dunkelzahn who's the king of Ilfar. Hey, we're giving out rings wishes to everybody. So they're just looking for like huge mess ups like that. And if they approve it, when they approve it, then you're good to go. Now, they do have final control over what magic items you give out too. So you can't say, I'm going to give out a +5 Holy Avenger Vorpal Sword of Slaying Dragons. So they definitely have authorial control. And in fact, we've had a couple magic items turned down by them. They also create the certs for it. Not that you need certs for D&D Adventures League technically anymore, but they will create the certs for you. We usually go through Dave Christ and his people at Baldman Games. They're our publisher. Dave usually handles that part, so I'm less informed about it. Then, once you run the adventures at your show, you are required to put them in the DM's Guild within 6 months. So it's a whole process. Another requirement of the Adventures League con-created content is you must write your adventures close, like air quotes, close to the Moonsea. And we discovered early in the process that Voonlar, and I'll provide you a map to show you where Voonlar is later, is not close enough to the Moonsea. So we decided with our next effort, we would do it in Elmwood, which actually is on the shore of the Moonsea. So that's another thing. You can't write just anywhere in the Forgotten Realms. You have to be up on the Moonsea.
Right. So even if, let's say, you run a bunch of slots, one table at a time, and you're running the adventure off of your head, you still need to get that adventure into the thing. And of course, you have to have submitted material beforehand. So you would never actually run it off of the top of your head. So let's talk about then writing that material, because it sounds like along the way, there's a system of checks and balances to ensure the quality of the adventure, which I think is great. And also to ensure that, like you said, you're not breaking the Adventurers League because the 30 people who showed up to your game store to play this weekend convention now all have wish rings, right? So what's the process like? How do you go about creatively putting these things together?
Well, so the process starts with, we have a area that we're playing in that we got approved for, that's Elmwood.
So what's Elmwood like? If we could, let's start there.
Righto. So Elmwood is a town that was destroyed back in Embers of Elmwood, which was a Season 2 adventure. And we figured this gave us both a location starting point and a place that was already referenced in canon. So the beauty there is that it had already been destroyed, so we didn't have to go forth and meet any really big canon designs about who lives there and what they do and that type of stuff. So it was a way to have a reference, but also a clean slate. And what we did with that is we, after having played Season 1 and Season 2 and Season 3, each of which has a large city that has some degree of corruption or internal strife, and generally is full of people that you wouldn't really want to hang out with, let alone work for the most part, or the people that you do work for end up, not being the people you thought they were. I think that's a generous thing to say for mods that are now years old without being like, spoiler alerts. But we decided that Elmwood was going to be I want to say neutral, good aligned town. Is that what we did, Paige? Yes, she's giving me the nod. And that we wanted to be full of people that were actually not out to screw your neighbor. And a large process of that was that they're still relatively small. They're still rebuilding. You have a bunch of people who have come from these towns where things have been destroyed. So Flan, where there was a dragon attack, Hillsfar, where there were demons, and Mulmaster, where there were devastation orbs that went off. And the thing that all of those have in common is that terrible things happened, and no doubt a lot of people left. Well, Elmwood is a place that's on the Moonsea that was rebuilding and welcoming people, and so it was an opportunity for a lot of people to get a fresh start. And so we have had a lot of fun exploring the ideas of what happens when you get a lot of interesting people in one place who have different designs about what the community they want to live in should be like. And not kind of from a evil, corrupt kind of way, but from a differing ideas and external forces kind of way.
A lot of times that's how we're shaping our world in the real world, right? It's not people who are necessarily malevolent. Everybody just has a different idea about the way things should be done. Maybe current politics excluded from that statement, but that's sort of how that works, which is really cool. It presents some really interesting options then for adventures and role-playing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when you take things like take the stormtroopers and the totalitarian regime out of /Black Fist / the City Watch that are all corrupt out of the equation, you end up with a different type of story. So the way that we start the process is we go, all right, what kind of stories do we want to tell around Elmwood, and how will this affect our people, and what way do the PCs have to shape the future of the community? We always start with player agency and what would be an interesting story to tell and what would have a lasting change and repercussion on our town that we can put out and let people at our cons, where we premiere our content and collect the survey information, just as they used to do for the QR codes for the main storyline content. And so that is where we start off with. And Paige and I will talk over some ideas. We'll get some ideas down on paper. And then around this time, we'll decide if we are going to write them ourselves or if we're going to get a team together. And at that point, we will throw ideas around on the team and vote on them. For instance, on the Elmwood First series, we ended up having, we had a wide offering of people to join us, and we voted on plots. And that's how we ended up with the Season 1 plot revolving around certain returning bad guys to the realms. So after we decided on that, we got some outlines together, hashed those out among ourselves and our writing teams, and then we send them off to the admins for approval 9 months out. Usually they're pretty quick about returning approval, either, oh, no, don't use this, or, oh, this is totally good to use, or what if you change this to this? By and large, the changes that they're making are to protect their additional storyline ideas. So, for instance, we've been told before that we can't use a certain bad guy, just period. And they won't tell us why. And so we were just like, okay, we'll do something slightly different. But how else can we spin this plot? So then shortly after we get admin approval, we get back with our teams, refine our outlines, refine our ideas, and start off with drafting. And Paige can speak more about how we set the drafting process and how we organize the calendars and things like that. So I'm going to hand it off to her, and then she'll pass it back to me in a bit.
Excellent. Well, that's really, really cool. And it sounds like you get sort of a hint maybe about future products as well when they say like, oh, don't use, bad person X because we have plans for them. Or they don't even say we have plans for this person necessarily, right? They just say don't use bad guy X. But the assumption is that maybe we got some plans for this person.
Maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, we've been denied a couple times for things, but have not actually seen what's come of it yet. But you have to remember that everything is in a state of flux everywhere, so they may have ideas about it, and those ideas might end up on the cutting room floor. But that's fine too. I mean, we have yet to have a problem other than our initial having to move out of Voonlar because we started writing. Well, we had lots of content already written. We already had started our advertising blitz on Facebook and email newsletters and things like that, talking about, oh, we're going to Voonlar. It's going to be great, kids. And then we were told, oh, no, you can't go there after we had already been approved by a different person. So things happen. And we just have to roll the punches and be quick on our feet. And thankfully, we're good creative people. At least my wife is, and I try to keep up.
So Paige, let's talk about the next steps then. What happens after this?
Well, I'm a little hyper organized. You might even call it control freak on bad days. So I like to have a plan. So we get together with our writing team for the 2 sets of 3 mods, the 2 trilogies that we've done at DragonCon. We've written them with a large team, so 12 or so people. So we get together, we use Google Docs, we use Google Surveys, and we take our general ideas that we sent to the outlines. We start assembling more detailed outlines like, hey, who are NPCs? We have an Elmwood narrative, which is the grand truth of everything in Elmwood. It has a list of about 100 NPCs and which buildings are which and some of the things going on in town. So we kind of check everything against our story narrative, and we get outlines together, and then we cross-pollinate those outlines so that the people who are writing Mod 3 are doing it with full knowledge of what's going on in Mod 1, so they can say, hey, why don't you hint at this thing in Mod 1 so we can pay it off in Mod 3? Or, hey, Mod 1, we're going to introduce this NPC. Let's make sure to use her in Mod 2.
And one of the things about that is that since we can have strong control over what happens in our 3 mods and then what happens in our future series, we get to have a lot more narrative connection and make it feel like a evolving place, much more than you can get in the full official D&D AL mods, where you might affect and become good friends with someone or do something negative with someone else and then have it just be never referenced again in future mods, which can be frustrating sometimes, but that's part of the organized play experience, and having to write for such a large multitude. And I think that's one of the best parts of the concreted content program.
And plus, we're kind of writing in a very small area. Like, we're not just writing in the Moonsea, we're writing in our little tiny town of Elmwood. So it's about 1,500 people. So, like, who the brewer is, and that she's kind of a cantankerous halfling, and who the priest of Bane is in town. He's kind of a cantankerous old fart, really. So you get, particularly with this idea that you're writing in such a small place, you get a good idea of what's going on in the town. So we can proof our outlines from Mod 1 to Mod 3 kind of all at once. And then we start sending the authors off and saying, hey, all right, go write me a detailed outline. And those comes back and we all look at them again. And they're all right, go out and write me the intermediate draft of the mod. And once we've got play testable intermediate drafts, we put out a call for playtesters, which is, our friends in Atlanta, as well as our friends across the nation. I would like to send a severe shout out of love to Rich Prinz and the Bay Area Ministry of Perilous Content, as well as Amy Zura for editing expertise and Dan Erbacher for editing expertise, because they have been very helpful in both playtesting and getting us feedback, as well as Jesse Tudela in the DC area. Once we
DC
get our
area. Sorry.
Yeah, hey, if you want to run some playtests for us, then we can hook you up.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, let's talk more about that after the podcast, because I'd love to.
Sure. And then once we get playtest feedback, usually Ben and I do the editing to take it from intermediate draft to playtest to final draft, and then circle back with the authors about some stuff. But because we've been involved the whole way, we know the stories, kind of from the meta perspective from the first mod to the final part of the trilogy. Once we've got final drafts in hand, we do all the cartography and handouts. It is a known flaw in my personality that I am a sucker for handouts. So any mod that I get as much as a pinky finger into is going to have a whole lot of handouts because I like props. And then 3 months ahead of time, we can give the final draft to the admins and then drink some beer. While things are in the admin's hands, we do some additional playtesting and polishing, like, hey, does this really work at the high level? Or, hey, is this, too hard at the really low level? And then once we get the blessing of the D&D Adventures League admins, we run it at the con.
So one of the other steps in there is that if we're going to run at a con, one of the things that all of our people who DM for us get to have is an experience where we run it for them. I'm probably going a little bit beyond myself, but it's like having author-onlys for all of these local adventures, because then the DMs will often ask us, oh, okay, so I understand how that goes together, but if I'm running this, what's this person's motivation? And they may not have access to, may not have been part of the writing team, may not have access to the narrative document, but we're able to help answer questions and help the DMs understand what NPCs want out of it, and how the motivations come together in ways that you can put all those things written down, and we try to do that as best as we can in the mods. But there's always a certain touch to being there to help explain what is written and what goes past what's in the pieces of paper. And so we end up getting really good runs of our modules at our cons because our DMs know what questions to ask and know what players want and know how to make the story fit the motivations of the players. So that's another way that we are very lucky to be able to tailor our experiences and our mods both to a local area and to a more home game feeling version of DAL where the choices that you have matter significantly.
That's above and beyond, I imagine, right? We should go on to say that you two are superstars, and so you are providing these amazing experiences that then trickle down and have the effect of making everybody else's experience amazing because the DMs have gotten a chance to play through it. Hey everybody, just wanted to take a quick break to let you know about this week's sponsor, BarkBox. That's right, BarkBox. It's like a loot crate for your dogs. For you, the listeners of Tabletop Babble, BarkBox is offering an opportunity to receive 1 free extra month of BarkBox at getabarkbox.com/DSPN. That's getabarkbox.com/DSPN and get a monthly box full of surprises and treats for your favorite furry friends. Check it out, getabarkbox.com/DSPN. I am going to throw a little bit of a curveball at you, and I hope this is okay. Is it okay to say that you two are married on air?
Oh God, yeah, you should.
Okay, all right, because that's
what's this ring I have on my what?
Yeah, no, serious. Like
so,
we're not just married. It's a gamer marriage. Like when we got engaged, I got an engagement ring, and Ben got a Geek Chic Vizier table.
That is.
I came out ahead.
Yeah. No, so we met at a D&D convention. It was a bunch of D&D players at our wedding. D&D has been one of our primary forms of entertainment as a couple, so it's all teamwork.
It's absolutely incredible. Your partnership as far as the breadth of work you put out is great. And, in talking with you two, it seems like you have a very healthy relationship as well. So my question would be, how do you two not kill each other when you're working on all of this stuff constantly together and having creative clashes and things like that? How do you make this partnership work? Because I think it's important for any creative and business sort of partnership for people to understand this, not just when you're married.
So the number one way that Ben and I get along with each other with games is that we don't ever play Magic together ever again. Ever.
To hell with your invisible stalkers and trepanation blades, woman.
So Ben's a sore loser. Is that really what it is? It's the can't handle defeat.
I have been a sore winner on an occasion.
I see.
It'll be interesting because we're both really looking forward to Fantasy Flight's new version of the Five Rings card game, and I sincerely hope that it is a game that we can play together without causing the same rifts that Magic caused, since I think those were our biggest hurdles of our marriage so far. But anyways, so the way that we end up not killing each other is we communicate a lot, especially when we are coming up with these initial ideas. We like to get out of our usual element. So we like to take trips. So there's a little goat farm in Tennessee that we like to go hang out with that just has a small cabin where there's just enough Wi-Fi to be able to look things up, but not enough to like run anything from the internet. So like you're not watching Netflix and hanging out up there. You're up there and you're working, because otherwise you're kind of playing with the goats, which is also great. And then we recently took one to New Orleans where we get out of our element, we go explore, we let our brains grow, and then we sit down and we communicate and we come up with ideas. And there's a lot of conversations that happen on these little retreats where we go.
Absinthe helps a lot.
There's a lot of conversations that go on in these where we come up with our initial ideas, and then we butcher them to death, and then we take the small prime cut of meat out and we set it aside, and then we take another great idea and we butcher it to death, and we take that next small nugget of filet mignon de mod and set it aside. And then from there, we communicate a lot. We have not weekly, but generally bi-weekly meetings with our authors and other content partners when we're in the middle of the outlining and drafting stages, so that people know what's going on and where it's going, and if people want to change something, here's why. And then we all go, hey, that's a cool idea, and what if we did this? And we have a really good creative process for making sure everyone feels valued and that their ideas are good. And thankfully, Paige and I are, I'm going to say, experienced enough rather than say have been playing organized play for too damn long, where we have an idea of what will work well with players and what won't. So that's another thing that we get a lot of really cool ideas, both while we're doing our little writing trips and also from our collaborators. And there's enough experience to temper them to what will play well at a convention where you have limited time, your DMs may have limited prep, you have limited ability to convey certain things. You may have, so for the most part, we've been writing 5 to 10 content. So you have people that have already played D&D. So it's not opportunities where you'll be teaching people how to play at the same time, which is another whole level of complexity that you have to write for. Because if you assume that you're writing 1 to 4 content, you have to be careful with how many tricks and red herrings and funky stuff you do, because if you go too far off the rails, then it could ruin somebody's experience for what D&D is a general good product and consistent product, which is part of the beauty of AL, because if you sit down at an AL table, you know you're going to get a certain kind of experience within a 2 to 4 to 8 hour time slot, and that consistency is key. So sometimes some of the really cool ideas may not fit that consistency, and sometimes there may be some of our collaborators who will see ways that we can make things fit or work that we don't. So communication, collaboration, and a lot of experience of running and organizing games is how we end up not killing ourselves, each other, or our other collaborators.
That is really, really cool. And so we've talked a lot about writing these adventures. How is writing an adventure for organized play like this? How is that different than writing an adventure for the DM's Guild? Like, that's meant for anyone to consume, meant for home play, like what MT Black is pretty famous for putting out on the DM's Guild right now. These one-shot adventures that are loose and fun and great at the table. How is what you're writing different? Because it's for a con.
So First of all, I want to say that I have tremendous respect for MT Black's work. I've talked to him a few times. I would love to have the time to write with him or like he does. Frankly, I'm going to have to win the lottery before I have enough time to write all the things that I would like to put on the DM's Guild.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how he does it. He's a prolific person, for sure.
Yes, he is. So when you're writing just an adventure for the DM's Guild, I think the rules are you have to stay in the Forgotten Realms. Forgotten Realms or maybe Ravenloft, but that's it. That's the rule. You must be in Forgotten Realms. With us, if you're writing for convention-created content, you have to follow all the Adventurers League rules, and you can't change creatures. You can reskin them. Like you can say, hey, this is actually a stat block for a young copper dragon, but I'm going to say it's a type of Hydra. But you can't actually change the creatures, so you can't change stat blocks. Whereas MT Black and the guys writing on DM's Guild can have their adventures be anywhere in the Moonsea. We are pretty much going to stay in Elmwood. We have to stay, or anywhere in the Forgotten Realms, we have to stay in the Moonsea.
I just wanted to quickly tag in that the guys and girls writing on DM's Guild, because it's fabulous to see so many different authors that are not just white dudes.
Yes, particularly in season 7. Particularly in season 7, they're not just a bunch of white dudes, which is awesome. I'm using guys in the gender neutral sense, but that is entirely correct. The other thing about writing for created content rather than just the DM's Guild is you kind of have to replace your divots. Like if you're going to write an adventure for the DM's Guild that says, the gnolls sweep out of the Anarok Desert and sack the entire Forgotten Realms all the way to Waterdeep, you can. Like nobody cares. That's a great adventure, and I'd like to write it. But you can't write that as part of the convention created content program because you kind of have to replace your divots. You have to leave the realms pretty much as you found them.
The only other thing is that there's a couple of really great supporting documentation for writing for DDAL and writing for the realms that do a great job of hitting home that both, as I just tagged in and talked about the diversity from the writer's side, that it's important to remember the diversity of the realms themselves. And these supporting documents do a great job of reminding you of how it's not just humans everywhere and how rare should Dragonborn be and things like that. And so it's great guidelines that you as authors for concrete content and for the AL seasons, you have a certain amount of reminders that not only you have to replace your divots, but you have to make sure you have a diverse and inclusive cast. So that we can continue to have diverse and inclusive gamers who see their heroes in play. And so it's still continuing the trend of being a more modern game. Not that there's anything wrong with the old, Boris Vallejo, totally ripped white dude on top of a throne of skulls and things like that. I mean, that had its time and is still has fond memories, at least from my childhood. But I also have to recognize that that's not only my game anymore. So, and it's great to see that the admins and the people behind the writing recognize and encourage that.
We've gone a long way in Elmwood to make sure that there are plenty of women in Elmwood, and particularly women in places of serious narrative power. There are LGBT plus individuals who have rich and interesting stories that are authentic to fantasy narratives everywhere. And there are plenty of persons of color in Elmwood. Because at Greenwood, Gary Gygax said from the beginning, it is a very diverse place.
Yes, definitely. It definitely is a very diverse place. And it also, again, particularly organized play, getting a lot of new players sitting down to the table, it definitely helps if some of those players are not just straight white dudes. If they see some people that look like them in the world, makes them feel a little more welcome at the table as well, I think. And it's great for bringing in new players, and it's also great for just creating awesome stories. Definitely having different kinds of people makes for a better, more interesting story, I think. What are some of your favorite stories that you have told in the realms as part of this program?
Tell me, Mrs. Mulder, which of your children do you love the most? Samantha or Fox?
Well, I mean, nothing bad happens to the ones you don't choose. I will definitely say, and I know this isn't part of the Concreated Content program, but I really enjoyed the Black Road, which is the D&D Adventurers League adventure that came out of your brains. So that is a super great adventure people should definitely check out. Hoping to get to play through lots and lots of Elmwood content soon.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Black Red was definitely fun. I mean, it's difficult here to like choose, as Paige was alluding to, choose our favorite child. I mean, but on the other hand, only one of them is played by David Duchovny. So,
nice.
But anyways, the Black Red was great. It was fun because it was small and it was kickoff to season 5. We've had a lot of success with it on the DM's guilds. It's a platinum seller. It's highly ranked overall in sales, and it was a great opportunity for us to take a relatively simple concept of caravan duty and throw it on its head and include some interesting different ideas to shake it up a little bit. On the other hand, we really enjoyed our first trilogy, and it's one of those things like it's great because it was our first. And we did it almost entirely in about 7 weeks because the program had just started. And I think for that time frame, it tells a great, compelling story. It sets up Elmwood really well, and it provides really interesting encounters that we had. This was our widest cast of writers, and you could see that there were a lot of really cool ideas that went into it, especially in such a short time frame.
It was like a 20-person writing team at one point, because we had people working on creating Elmwood, we had people working on writing the mods, we had people working on researching canon in the realm so we could figure out if we were stepping on canon somewhere. It was a hot mess.
That's awesome that you had 20 people working on this thing. Holy crap. That is incredible.
And that's why all the profits for Trilogy 1, like the share of profits we get, go entirely to charity. They go to the Food Bank of East Tennessee, because I've never met a gamer that doesn't believe in food and feeding people. So we literally were not willing to chase around people and hand out small checks to 20 people. It's just not worth it. So we decided to give all the profits to charity.
That's great. And a really cool thing. So people feel good about yourselves when you go check out this adventure. Be good to yourself and be good to the world. And go check this thing out.
Our second trilogy, which we released at Origins, was really exciting and fun because it was a much smaller writing team. It was an honor to write for Origins, an honor to be asked, and we ended up working on it with just Paige, myself, and Sean Molly, who is a veteran of organized play in so many ways, and it's been a great inspiration to both of us, me especially. Funny story, Paige said that we met at a D&D convention, and she was the organizer and I was just a player, and I was sitting 1 or 2 tables away from Sean running a table of LFR, Living Forgotten Realms in 4th edition, and I was like, oh man, that guy's really good. I want to sit at his table. And so the way we became acquainted was I schmoozed the con coordinator and then ended up being press ganged into volunteering, and eventually found out that I liked it a lot, and then we ended up getting married. And Sean served pretty much as the closest thing we had to a best man at our wedding. So he's a great person to write with, has a crazy inventive mind as far as writing content and coming up with exciting ways to present ideas to the players in a form that is well honed for Adventurers League and 4-hour content. And actually, the other way that most people may know him is if you've gone to, for instance, you've gone to Origins and played the D&D Open, he is usually the big guy shouting without any need for sound sound equipment to share box text and announcements for all, 20 or 30 odd tables that are in that giant ballroom. So anyways, that was a really cool experience. Our third trilogy comes out this year at DragonCon. It's another large team. It's fun because it goes back to exploring some of the core themes of Elmwood. And it was written with new authors in mind to find new and different authors and to start training that next generation. And that's one of the things that we have been thinking about, and we'll get to more when we talk about Dragon Con, about finding the next generation of gamers and making sure that they know what's up and they aren't, thrust into either writing or into con organizing or anything like that, where they have no idea what's going on. It's very important that we take the and excuse me for corp speak, but our institutional knowledge and how much we know about writing and about organizing content and organizing gamers, and make sure that that is shared, so that when we get tired of it, or God forbid we get hit by a bus, that doesn't stop with us. And then our season 4 of content that we are currently in the outline and idea stage is going to be at Secret Mission Con 2018. And I can't tell you anything else about that, other than it's going to be lots of fun.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to check it out. That sounds really cool. Maybe I'll get myself to that con so I can learn more about it. Let's talk about organizing conventions a little bit, right? Because we've sort of covered the writing side of this, and so very quickly, kind of, I guess as quickly as we can cover it, I should say, because there's a ton to this. How did you decide to start organizing conventions on your own? Like, it boggles my mind. Like, I wouldn't even know where to begin. Do I just call up a hotel and I'm like, hey, can I have some conference rooms to run game? Like, how does this all work, and sort of what inspired you to get started doing it?
So this is my fault. Like I said, I have a collie-like instinct to herd gamers. I can't help it. It is a known character flaw. And during living Greyhawk, so early oddies, Atlanta had a really awesome, diverse, big living Greyhawk group. Actually, the whole Southeast did. But Atlanta in particular had a bunch of authors and players and had a bunch of cons. And they were small cons. And by small, I mean Friday night, all day Saturday, most of Sunday, and probably between 10 and 20 tables per slot. And the guy who was running them, named Tim Chandler, who is a wonderful guy and a good friend of mine, needed some help. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll help. And so then it took off, and running it became pretty easy once you had a system down. And I had a lot of great guys running conventions in Atlanta to learn from. And I like organizing stuff. So it became easy. We had a trained hotel. It's like, hey, we want to have a con. They're like, all right, we'll ship you the contract. And I organize cons all over, like in other states, even for Living Greyhawk. Did the same for Living Forgotten Realms, which is where Ben and I got together. And then now with D&D Adventures League, it's the same kind of thing. Once you have a place where you've got your facility trained, and you know it's a price point that you can not get taken to the cleaners on, then you're good to go.
But taking a step back to how Jane started the question about how do you get involved with hotels? Like, how do you decide how many tables you can support, and how do you do that type of stuff, Paige? Because you've been more involved with the talking to the hotels and the organizing from how big of a thing can we get? How do you know how big your local population can support? How do you have the feeling of how many people will come from out of town and things like that?
Yeah, how do you not go bankrupt?
Yeah, because that's stuff that you know much better than I do.
So I want to start out, like, we're not going bankrupt on these cons, but they're carefully financially organized so that we lose $100, couple $100 a con. Like, we don't make money. We never make money. We don't want to make money. I do not want it to be an income stream. I don't want the IRS getting interested. As far as I'm concerned, it's a hobby that allows me to lose money and is at an acceptable rate.
Kind of like gambling, but
kind
the
of
dice
like
are different.
Gambling, but the dice are different. Yes. So I got lucky in that I had the institutional knowledge from the Living Greyhawk days to build on, because Tim said, well, hey, we're going to run a con. It'll be about this many people. We need to set up this many tables. We'll be fine. And so it's literally a matter of experience. And my advice for people who want to start organizing is start small. do a game day at your friendly local game store where you don't have to pay for convention space, and just run. If you can run 5 one Saturday game days in a year, you will know how many of those people will show up for a Saturday Sunday con. If you run 2 or 3 Saturday Sunday cons, you will know who will show up for a holiday weekend Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday con. The other thing you do is you talk to people in the area. In the Southeast, we are blessed to have Jenny Loveday as our former local coordinator for D&D Adventures League and our current unofficial source of all organization for D&D Adventures League. Find out who has the institutional knowledge in your area and quiz them and get their help.
That makes perfect sense. And it's a good guide, and certainly talking to people who've done it before is great advice for anything, right? New. So this is super duper helpful. And let's talk about Dragon Con. So Dragon Con is actually my very first convention where I went and played games when I lived in Atlanta. What is Dragon Con? Because it is far more than a gaming convention, I would say. So let's talk about that and talk a little bit about how you organize there, because it seems like that is, dare I say, one of the crown jewels in your convention organization. Crown?
No one can tell you what Dragon Con is. You must see it for yourself.
I agree. I definitely agree. So it's enormous. I had no idea. It is an enormous media convention, I guess is the best way to put it. Nerd media.
Yeah, so I mean, the way that we traditionally describe it is it's one of, if not the largest science fiction and fantasy fandom conventions, but it goes so far beyond that because there's all kinds of, so in addition to all of your tracks that are dedicated to, for instance, the Whedonverse and to British science fiction, there's all kinds of stuff about, like rocket science and cryptography and all kinds of other like actual practical, if you're a nerd, these are things that you can nerd about. And it's gone far beyond what it used to be, where it was just a little bit, where it was just fans. So now it's they get experts, they get all kinds of people coming in from all over the country, all kinds of stars, and it is a huge convention. So it's annual over Labor Day weekend in downtown Atlanta. So that means we're often competing against PAX, which means that we don't get to see a lot of people from West Coast, a lot of people that are like diehard Acquisitions Incorporated fans, but that's cool too, because one of the things about Dragon Con is because it's so huge, and it basically takes over most of the hotels in the downtown Atlanta area, either with the rooms or actually hosting events and parties and balls and galas and masquerades and costume contests and this and that and the other, is that we have a huge audience of people who either play D&D back in, first, second, third, maybe even fourth edition, that haven't played fifth edition, or they have seen D&D on Community, or they've seen it on Stranger Things, or they are some of those people that avidly watch and pay attention to actual play podcasts and Twitch streams like Critical Role. I mean, bless us for Critical Role for the hobby, in addition to Acquisitions Inc., which has a whole different group. And there are a lot of people who can't make it all the way out to the West Coast for that. So we end up with a lot of people that are really keen on Acquisitions Inc. stuff. And then the newest one that we're aware of, Maze Arcana, that is definitely growing as a force for cool D&D stuff and a way to connect with people. And so you get a lot of those people all showing up in the same place, as well as people who are fans of this, that, or the other, and they're like, oh, D&D, I've heard about that. How do you play that? And so Dragon Con, in addition to being the big, hardcore, crunchy con where we get things like we get at least one epic, and last year and this year we have been fortunate enough to be big enough to be considered to get the D&D Open, which is a really amazing piece of content that is only offered to large conventions, and this year is going to more, thank God, because being one of the 3 places it was at last year was kind of like, I mean, there's always a certain level of pressure of this event is super important because this is our opportunity to show off and to share Atlanta DMs and Atlanta D&D and Southeast Hospitality and this, that, and the other, but getting content that is only available at 3 times ever and is a 8-hour 20+ table experience is a whole nother level of stress that's
Nightmare-inducing. Nightmare-inducing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to go there, but yes. So we have that, but we also have a zillion new players, and so we always walk a tightrope between how much content do we offer towards the people that are looking for special experiences that they can only get like the open, or looking for things like tier 3 and tier 4 content that are hard to organize tables for in local gaming environments sometimes, because unless you have a full table of tier 3 or tier 4,
Right.
thankfully there's more content that can get people to tier 3, and there's more tier 3 content available now. So the concreted content, tier 3 content, is not, I mean, I think I have to go back and look, but I still think there's much more. There's an equal amount or more, and somebody's going to slam me on this, I'm sure, concreted content that is tier 3 as there is official. So it's really broad than that.
It's close. It's close.
And we could go into a whole counting, but I think we'll save your listeners that. So anyways, it's a tightrope between making sure new players are happy and that we can engage people and get people to go, oh man, that was an amazing time I had playing D&D. I want to play that at home, which can grow the hobby. Mm-hmm. And then also keeping the people who want their high-level content and their con-specific, I traveled all the way down here to play my 17th level, blah, 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 happy. So it's really exciting, and it's an amazing melting pot and opportunity where you can do all that stuff, and you can be walking your way down to the food court and run into all kinds of movie stars. So, like, I mean, I was in an elevator with Patrick Stewart, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. I wandered around. I was walking to go get coffee, and I was in line behind the guy that plays, or Mark Shepard, I think, the guy who plays Badger in Firefly, and had prominent spaces on Doctor Who and other shows. And it's surreal.
Yeah,
is the only way to describe
a corner and literally bumped into Brandon Routh once. So yeah, there's a ton of your favorite actors and people there, and now your new best friends, Ben and Paige, will also be there. So definitely, if you're in the area or if you're looking for a great con, definitely check out Dragon Con, because it is awesome. So before we go then, where can people find you and all of the great, wonderful things that both of you do?
On Twitter, you can find me at Paige Leitman, Leitman. You can find both Ben and I on email at AtlantaDDAL, like Atlanta D&D Adventures League, at gmail.com. And if you look up on Facebook, if you look up the D&D Adventures League in Georgia, you will find both of us frequenting that on a relatively common basis.
Nice. And where can people find you, Ben?
So the easiest way to reach me is either the Atlanta DDL at Gmail account, since that is a shared account and we will check it frequently. You can also reach me on Twitter at Zentarum PR. So it's Zentarum, ZHE. And Tarim. Yes, PR is in Zentarum Public Relations, which is my original 5th edition AL character, who was like, oh, Zentarum, we're all bad guys in the previous edition. No, we're the new Zentarum. We're great guys. We're here to save you. It's just, we're going to go 180 on this and see how people treat it. And it's been a lot of fun. You can find our work on the DMs Guild under, is it under Baldman Games, or is it...
I think it's Baldman Games, and then there's each Elmwood series is within there, but I will link it up in the show notes for this episode. So if people head over to don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com and check the show notes for this episode, they'll be able to find them.
That is an awesome network name. And then also check out the Black Road.
Yes, please.
Just 5-2.
Yeah, it's so good. So good. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today here on Tabletop Babble.
Thank you very much, James.
Man, that was a great interview. I love having Paige and Ben on the show. Thank you so much for being here. You know, Tabletop Babble's still a new show, and the best way to support us is to help other people find us and to help us grow. And you can do that by leaving us a great rating on iTunes. That's right. Even if you don't have an iTunes account, go make one. It's free. It takes 30 seconds, and then you can support us and all of the other amazing podcasts you listen to, because a lot of podcatcher apps use iTunes ratings to recommend and help people find and form their top lists and that sort of thing. And to encourage you to do that, I read one new 5-star review verbatim and credit the person who left it. You can make me say anything that you want me to say. Today, we have Dork Word. And Dork Word says, see comments below. Dork Word's review is Heisler. I do not understand the reference and hopefully did not just open a portal to a hell dimension. But I guess we'll see. At least we'll have recorded evidence. Dork Word, thank you so much for your 5-star review. People, I'm running out. Make me say anything. Come on, let's do it. And if you want to support the show financially, head on over to don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com and use our Amazon and Drive-Thru RPG affiliate links before you shop. You just click on the banners on the left-hand side of the site. Real easy. Shop as you normally would. Costs you nothing extra. We get a tiny percentage of that sale coming back to us. Go there, click on them, bookmark them, make us your favorite person to support whenever you shop on Amazon. Thank you so much to everybody who has done that. Your support means a ton. All right, people, you can find me on Twitter at James Introcaso, and you can also find me on my blog, worldbuilderblog.me. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network, thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. Remember that RPGs are like sex.
Party 13, let's suit up for adventure.
They're the only ones that can save the world.
What?
A fantasy world of magic, monsters, and heroes.
Yeah, hello? Where is that voice coming from?
Heroes like Andar Patron, the star of our story.
Yeah, that's me, but what are you talking about?
Oh, sorry. We're in a promo for your podcast. Did nobody tell you?
What?
Your podcast. Have Spellbook Will Travel?
Have Spellbook?
It's a scripted fantasy comedy audio drama based on the creator's experiences playing tabletop games.
To be honest, that sounds pretty boring.
Well, it's hilarious. And heartwarming. And great. Super great.
Whatever you say, buddy.
Have Spellbook Will Travel on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Start the adventure at havespellbook.com or wherever podcasts are available for free.